5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub on the other side, and the MGoBlog Roundtable crew is back, and a lot to talk about again this week. Glad to be joined by the crew, MGoBlog.com, the man that started it all over there, Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am entering the NBA draft despite the implausibility of me being selected.
Right. Or at least what was seemingly the implausibility.
Sure,
Right?
yes.
It's just,
Somebody believes in me. Somebody believes in me.
It only takes one, Brian.
I believe in you, Brian.
Thank you.
You got a guarantee.
I've been, watching Brian progress in his tennis game and his bridge game. I mean, he's coming along.
All right. That voice you hear is already here. What did you think about Nadal Djokovic there, Craig? Give you a little tidbit.
I'm a big Nadal fan. I'm not much of a Djokovic fan, so I was very happy. It's sort of surprising that Nadal can keep cruising along. My tennis coach in town back a number of years ago, when Nadal was young, said there was no way that any human could continue to play the way Nadal plays and hold up, that his body just couldn't hold up playing like that. And he turned out to be wrong because, he has held up and he is still, one of the top, at worst, 2 or 3 players in the world. Maybe he's still the best player in the world. I don't know. But it's remarkable, just quite remarkable, because Djokovic played well and Nadal was just too physical, too strong, and just beat him up in the end. It was pretty impressive.
It'd be interesting to see how much he has left in the tank. And that's impromptu. That's just Craig Ross being versatile. Showing his versatility, his sports versatility there. Of course, you also heard another MGoBlog Roundtable voice before the roundtable, and that was Seth Fisher. Seth, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I don't think Brian thinks he's going to get drafted. I think he's just sick of playing second banana to me.
Well, guys, Michigan is not playing second banana to anyone in the Big Ten, or at least in the Big Ten tournament, as they won the whole damn thing. It was not out of the it was not something that heading into the tournament I think any of us were expecting. But if you listen back to Eric Backage heading into that thing, more than just ordinary coach speak. Like, you're supposed to go into it thinking you're gonna win, right? Every team should think that. But when there's a squad, as a team, as a coach, oh man, we probably really don't have it. You just got a different vibe from Eric Backage heading into this one. Like, he knew, like, we could win this whole damn thing. We just got to figure out this pitching piece enough to be able to let our bats win it. And Craig, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was pretty surprised. I mean, the team ERA was either last or next to last in the Big Ten at 7.76. And they really have, over the course of the year, have had trouble pitching the ball. Now they've hit it, and they've hit it from interesting places. Joe Stewart is maybe the most interesting one to me, because he was redshirted at Michigan State. Then the next 3 years, he had 19 total at bats. And now he's looking like, maybe this guy has some place in the professional game. He's big. He's a good defensive player. He can play. He's a nice outfielder, and he's got power and he's got speed.
I don't even know.
He makes Michigan State fans so mad. They are so mad.
How do you even find that guy? Like, I didn't know the 19 at bat piece until you just said that. How do you even find that
he
guy?
Was playing after he graduated from state, he was playing in some league in Western Michigan with a kid named Dylan Stanton, who I think is hurt, but is on the Michigan team and looks like maybe a good player. And Stanton went to Bakich and said, "Hey, you better look at this guy, because I think he can really play." And so Bakich did and said, "Yeah, he can really play. Let's bring him into the program." And I think he was going to take a job in Texas someplace, but after he graduated from state. One of the depressing things to me was he got beamed in the state game.
Yeah, he
They
did.
they,
Yeah.
they threw at him and they hit him in the head, which seems like a little déclassé.
Well, I mean, how did that game end? State started it by throwing at him, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, then he knocked it out of the park, ran around the bases, and stomped on the plate.
Yeah.
Which, you know, baseball more than any other sport, they've got their like, oh, you don't do that, right? Like
Right.
there's super secret rules that all baseball players stand by. But Michigan was just breaking every single one of them. They were showing up the pitchers and everything. After that, that sparked Michigan, and I kind of think that started the trajectory upwards for the hitters on this team. Because I mean, that series, I know it was against State, and they're like the dregs of the league.
They were
but like,
probably the worst team in the Big
yeah,
Ten.
but I mean, it was a real coming together moment for the team because you know they're throwing at this guy because they're mad that he transferred to Michigan, and they're like, well, we'll show you, and they just trounced him. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
Well,
but you still got to pitch though, and they go and they get
One thing.
you go and get manhandled, and Eric, to his credit, like Ira said, he does not pull any punches, even when it's Michigan. Like for instance, you just said, hey, he was stomping on the play, and the team was really getting into it. Like that's Eric too. I'm sure if you talk to him, you get that vibe off of him. But you know, you mentioned that they beat Michigan State. Hey man, you know, you also had in that mix them they gave up what 40-something runs or something like that to Maryland in that second to last series of the season. He was
Yeah,
like,
they
man,
had with a 19-game run against or 19-run game against Rutgers. Like, keep in mind, Rutgers and Maryland are both good hitting teams. Those are two of the better hitting teams in the country. Nobody has pitching in the Big Ten except for Iowa. But I mean, yeah, the pitching's pretty big. Even before they lost Weiss, the pitching's been bad. But some of it's been kind of like they have games where they give up 4 runs, and they have games where like just the lid comes off, or they'll be cruising through a game and they'll be like up 5-2 or they'll be down 5-2, and then all of a sudden the lid comes off at the end. So like the pitching, it's survivable. I don't trust it at all, but it's no one out there is going to be that good.
you mean you're talking about in the NCAA field, or you're just talking about in the Big Ten?
Michigan's pitching, I don't trust at all, and everyone but in the Big Ten except for Iowa, I think their pitching I don't trust either.
I would agree with. I think that's accurate. I mean, what did you guys think about the fact that Rutgers didn't make the tournament and Kevin Warren didn't say a damn thing? I mean, isn't that Kevin Warren's job to be out there whining and complaining about this? I'm not like a Rutgers fan, but Rutgers got ripped off here. They should be in the NCAA field, and Kevin Warren should be out there, shaking his fist at the NCAA, as opposed to, say, being in the replay booth during a Michigan State game. It seems to me this might be a better point of his existence.
So I guess so you mean to just wave the flag? I mean, to what end? I guess
at least to show that he's supporting the conference and the teams in the conference. And it seems to me that Rutgers got ripped off. They should be in the tournament. And at least it seems to me the head of the conference should have been out there saying, this was wrong. And by the way, forget the NCAA. We're forming our own baseball league. And we're playing in the summer. Now, I don't expect him to do that. I think he should, but I don't expect it. But at least I think he should whine and complain about the fact that, the Big Ten got dissed here, and Rutgers in particular got hammered, and they deserve to be in this tournament.
Yeah, maybe it makes a difference in the future. Maybe it placates the Rutgers masses. I don't know what he could have done to get him in, and that seems to me to be the bigger criticism. That seems to be the bigger criticism. Well, Kevin Warren, he should have gotten Rutgers in, is the one that I've seen.
I don't know if he had that authority, but I think he had the authority to whine about it.
Yeah, well, he can still do that.
Yeah,
he can still do that.
Oh, but I mean, that's what Craig's saying, that like, if it was Ohio State left out, Kevin Warren would have said something.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe it's that. Maybe it's Rutgers doesn't register. I don't know.
That's what it is, and I understand where Rutgers fans are because Kevin Warren's been like that since we got him. If it bothers Ohio State even a little bit, he is on it. He is all over it. Whether he can do something about it or not, he is all over it, and it's happening enough now that it's you kind of have to look at the guy and be like, hey man, there's the rest of a conference too. Like it's not just about protecting like one big football franchise, which I get. Like that's their moneymaker. But like, I mean, Rutgers baseball matters to Rutgers baseball people, and it looks a lot like he's not caring about a lot of things that he should be caring about.
Yeah. I have another question for all of you if you have an opinion on this. Michigan pitching, Michigan pitching was not only bad, some of their guys really went in the tank. Like Weiss this year was not good by and large, but he'd been a really good pitcher for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden, he's not even a shadow of what he was pine tar, no pine tar last year. And same to some extent, the same for Cam Weston, who was a really nice pitcher in 2021 and not so much this year, or not nearly the consistency. I mean, is it Chris Fetter? Is it something with the baseballs? You guys have any instinct at all? Because I find it confusing.
I always defer to Ira on the Willie Weiss piece. You got any theories on Willie? Ira, and I'll share what Eric said before the whole pine tar incident. He said that, hey, man, he had a lot of pressure on him. I think he loaded up with like 18 or 20 credits or something like that so he could graduate. And so the academic load was just over the top. And once that was done, once he, had his degree, that he was just free. And he started pitching a lot better. Now, was he using pine tar? I have no idea. I have no idea about any of that.
So to add on to that, I don't have a whole lot to add to what Eric said. The credits thing is very plausible to get it. You graduate and you have your diploma and you've got just some freedom to play ball. There's a lot of plausible to that. Willie was coming off the last couple of years. He had some lingering things that were going on. So if the injuries are better and all that kind of stuff, but I go back to what you said, Sam. We don't know the one other part of it, which is what led to the suspension. Other uses have there been over the last few weeks? Because in the last month, his batting average against Willie was like 222 or something, or lower than that. He had been great all after graduation, which is why Eric's explanation was plausible. But there's some other things now hanging over it too.
So I'm curious, what do you guys think of of Eric's commentary on that? The way he handled the question that I know was being somewhat debated, at least, was, do you punish him above and beyond what the rules say, which is 4-game suspension? But it sounds like that Eric's not going to do that. But what do you think of the way he addressed it immediately after the fact, and then again with us?
I thought it was fine. I think he said, look, your children can screw up, but it doesn't mean you don't love them. And, and he said, this isn't what we have our kids doing. It's not what we want in our program. He was punished by the NCAA, and it's fine. The punishment was fine as far as we're concerned. And I thought he handled it right. I think, Sam, you or Ira said that, most coaches would just say, well, the NCAA spoken, we're done with it. That's it. No, right. He was willing to talk about it. And I appreciate that from Bakich a lot. He was willing to confront it, say that it was wrong, say that, Weiss had been talked to, and that it wasn't something that was endemic to the program or something they wanted their pitchers to do. So
it's whatever, man. Anyone in this town can't go. Remember Kenny Rogers against the Yankees? Yankees fans are still mad about that. The pro clutching over this issue, when it happens all the time in baseball. Baseball is just there's so many games, there's so many innings. Everyone's trying to get a little bit of edge. They steal each other's signs all the time. Yeah, it's baseball. Come on. This is how the game has always been. Now, I get he got caught, and probably shouldn't have done it. And like, I don't think that he was like, it wasn't an accident that stuff was on there, right?
Right.
But the pearl clutching over this is just so over the top. Like, oh my God, Michigan shouldn't be allowed to win the Big Ten after that. The guy faced 2 batters in the whole
So
Big Ten
listen,
tournament.
so I understand. I'm not versed in the art of pitching, but guys conceal this. The ump handles the baseball a lot,
Right.
right? How do you was he just putting like globs of it on? Was he obvious with
No,
with
what they see,
rubber?
so it's like, so you put it on your glove, and then like you touch your glove a little bit before you go to pitch, and there's never enough to do anything but make your fingers a little bit tacky. And what they noticed was him touching his glove. So like in that motion of touching the glove before you go pitch, like that's what they saw. And Iowa points it out right away, and the umpires go look at the glove, and the glove is a little sticky, and that's it.
It reminds me of the Bob Uecker thing in Major League, I guess, when he announces the pitch and he goes, Vaseline ball.
I thought of that movie immediately.
There's another scene, Sam, from that movie that I'm not going to repeat the whole line, but when the old picture's showing Ricky Vaughn, he's got different substances on his chest,
Everywhere.
Yeah.
right, all over. He's got feminine products and other products. Yeah, there's a great line from that movie that definitely jumped in my head.
Yeah, he had it in his hair. He had it in his nose. He reached in his shorts. He has stuff everywhere, man. And I guess there's an art to it, right? There's an art to concealing how you apply whatever tacky substance you're applying. There's an art to concealing that, and not to say that I'm trying to advise him on how to cheat the system, but it seems like his concealment wasn't what it needed to be. Fair to say, right, Seth?
yeah, like they'll get better at it, man. Like, a couple of years in the Astros farm system, they'll be great.
So all right. So call your shot. I mean, what kind of damage do you guys see him doing in the NCAA tournament? I mean, can this piecemeal sort of approach, is that sustainable? I'm talking about pitching. Is that sustainable? Because they're going to hit. Like this squad, there's enough of a sample space over the course of the season. Say they're going to hit. Can they give up 5 runs instead of 7 runs a game? I mean, is that sustainable for this team?
My opinion is no. I mean, my opinion is that the chances of them getting out of the regional are slim. I don't see it happening. I just don't think the pitching is good enough. I think you got to give them credit and Bakich credit over what they've done this year. They're a fun team to watch. I mean, they got 8 guys who can hit the ball. I mean, Clark Elliott's had a phenomenal year. Seems like a really smart kid. And Fry and Bertram, Obertop, Flores, Burton, Joey Velasquez has come off the football field.
I was wondering when you were going to get to Joey V.
And has played well. I mean, they can hit the ball, and they have power too. I mean, they've hit home. I mean, you don't hit home runs at Fisher very often, but they've hit home runs at Fisher because Fisher is more of a pitcher's park, which makes the Michigan ERA even more, profound, given the fact that Fisher is a pitcher's place. And so, no, I don't see them doing anything in this tournament. I see them giving up way too many runs.
That's bulletin board material, Craig Ross.
All right,
Eric
that's
Jack is
fine.
going to call you out.
I'm gonna give them more, man. I felt like the balls were a little juicy in Omaha. Like, there are some of those Michigan home runs. It looks like a fly ball off the bat, and then it's just like, that's gonna carry. Oh my God! Like that. It felt like some hits were going out that like your baseball brain does not expect to go out. Even the bunts, like their squeezes were awesome.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons their squeezes were so awesome was that ball was just flying off the bat when it hit it. It just it's going to be a really tough regional too. Like there's a lot of hitting teams. Like Louisville is one of the better hitting teams.
Yeah.
Oregon's a big hitting team.
Hit.
So I mean, you could win these games 19-8, but they're. I don't trust their pitching at all. It always just feels like the next pitch is just going to start like a bad series of hits and hit batters and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Someone,
Get some feedback on this real quick. DTuck17 says pitching is bad everywhere this year. Mark Lewis makes another point. He said we also gave up 50 unearned runs this year as well. So
yeah, I was going to bring that up. I looked in the Big Ten. Well, our ERA was 7.76. The number of runs given up was 8.5 plus. So really, in the Big Ten, we were giving up pushing an extra run, unearned run a game. There's some some problems there. Although scoring, I'll have to say this: the way the scoring is in college baseball is, it's completely random, and so whether something is a hit or an error or not is often head scratching. Anyway, yeah, if the pitching is bad everywhere, if that's true, and that's something I don't know, let's assume it is. Maybe it's a baseball function. Maybe it's some. I mean, there's been a lot of noise about that in the major leagues this year, where there's been no hitting, where teams are pushing the Mendoza line as in Major League Baseball this year as a team batting average.
right.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
all right.
the ball changes are can impact the game.
Well, we will certainly see, right? It'll be fun to watch to see if this team can go on a run. It's going to be fun to watch transitioning now. Michigan basketball next year, even with these two guys staying in the draft, because if I had told you before the season, you're going to have one of Musa Diabate, Caleb Houston, or Hunter Dickinson back, I don't know of anyone who would have predicted that one was going to be Hunter Dickinson. So if you look at it from that perspective, Brian, I mean, it's not all bad. I think Ross' team was like, oh, Michigan got hit harder than anyone. This is the kind of hit, if you had your choice, this would be the hit that you would take.
Yeah. And, frankly, both those guys were guys who had high potential and would have loved to get either back. But in terms of their on-court production, Michigan isn't losing like the equivalent of 2 NBA first-round picks, really. So I think if they can find a couple of guys, getting Dickinson back is huge. Obviously, I mean, on the college level, he's the star. So just gotta find someone who can shoot, a bench shooter. I know that Craig has been bringing up Joey Baker, who's a grad transfer from Duke. Jacob Grandison from Illinois just withdrew from the NBA draft and will spend his extra year in the portal. Well, won't spend the year in the portal, but is in the portal. So, and then there's some mid-major guys out there, and I think Terrence Williams and Cheddar can probably hold down the 4 spot, and it's just like, you got Jed at the 3, and you just need another guy in the backcourt, and you have an extra scholarship open that you can play with, whatever you want.
Do you guys agree with my belief that, coming in, even if the rankings don't say it, that you're getting a more versatile offensive player in Jet this year compared to Caleb coming in last year?
Well, if Jet can hit anything off the move, then yes. I mean, that's not supposed to be a joke. It's true. I mean, if he's able to relocate, if he's able to get himself shots, then yeah, I think he's a more versatile offensive player. And I think it's always good to have sophomores instead of relying on freshmen every year. But he's a guy who's proven himself at the highest level in a context where he's not the guy who you kick it out to after Cade Cunningham creates a shot.
Well, let me go out, excuse me, a little bit on a limb on this. Is I watched a lot of Caleb Houston last year, a lot of his tape, and was not particularly impressed. And I watched a lot of Jet, and I think Jet is a better player. I think he's a better player coming in than Caleb was coming in. Now, maybe Caleb's ceiling is higher. I don't know. I guess we'll see. We're not going to see at Michigan. I was hopeful that we would see what a lot of other people saw. But I'll say this now. I never said it all year. There was a name in the back of my head when I saw Caleb Houston, and it was Cam Chapman. And that's sort of what I saw, and I didn't want to say it, but that's sort of what I saw. And so the Jet, I'm not seeing that. Jet, I'm seeing a guy who is a more rounded player, not a great athlete, but probably a better athlete than Caleb.
Can you say that in the hot take voice, Craig? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're gonna...
I can't do. I don't know how you guys do that. It hurts my throat to do that.
Oh, it hurts. Yeah, it's a painful experience. Yeah.
I mean, it's not painful for me listening to it, but I can't imagine myself doing it.
I have to be on the board modulating Brian as he goes, because he starts really low. Like,
do you guys buy
Mhm.
what, at least to me, seems like the NIL effect on bigs in college basketball? Because you got Hunter, you got Baycott at North Carolina, you have Schwebe at Kentucky, now you have Drew Timme at Gonzaga. These are not the NBA prototype big now, where they want a fully switchable guy, that can run the floor, block shot, be a rim protector. These are not that guy. So now, if you're one of those guys, you come back to college, get more NIL money, or as much anyway, at least NIL money as you could get G League money, come back and be the man on campus for another year. Do you think that is maybe the NIL effect, the NIL benefit to college basketball, that you're going to be able to keep bigs back, specifically bigs back, because look at the names I just mentioned?
Yeah, I completely believe that. I don't think Hunter Dickinson is back in college this year if NIL doesn't exist, right? Like, he's gonna make more at Michigan than he would anywhere else in the world. So obviously, even if he's just making a base calculation and he's not thinking about making Tom Izzo eat his own liver, this is a smart move for him. And then you get the bonus of making Tom Izzo eat his own liver. So yeah, I think this is something that is good for college basketball, because you want Sheboy back, you want Dickinson back, you want Timme back, you want a guy like Iggy Brasdeikis back, if that's going to be a possibility, because Brasdeikis went to the G League for 2-3 years before catching on in any capacity in the NBA. So I think you're going to see more guys come back, and I think we have two developments going on right now that are, one's pretty bad for college basketball, which is rampant portal stuff, and one's pretty good for college basketball, which is you're getting some of your stars back.
I have two thoughts to that. One is, it sure seems like Illinois is doing the NIL thing better than we are somehow. And two is, why don't we all wear shirts on the round table that just say NIL on them, and then get money directly from NIL and cut out the middleman? Never mind. I didn't say that.
Did you work on this joke?
I did, and I told it to my wife, and she said, "Do not say that. It's the stupidest thing anybody ever said." But that's what somehow when you read message boards, that's what it sounds like sometimes.
So like, because we're like promoting NIL like a catch-all kind of. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I noticed while writing the recruiting articles for like the 2022 recruits. I was doing Mason Graham, and I'm like, Michigan fans are just gonna love this guy's personality. Like, you read some of his quotes, and you're like, Michigan, like, it not because he's a nice guy, it's because he's a Chase Winovich. He's just these personalities in college stick out, and until you're starting in the NBA and actually like having a major effect, that's not going to happen in the NBA. But that's part of your value when it comes to NIL too. And Hunter Dickinson's a great example. I mean, he's not just a big player on the court. He's not just an important player who's more valuable to a college team in the college game because of how the college game is played. But his personality off the court, and he's like a person that fans get behind. That kind of thing is valuable in college. That's one of the factors too. I think you have two perfect examples of how NIL is working right now with Dickinson and with Diabate, because Diabate is a guy he's going to be an NBA player, and his value was that he had all this twitchy talent, and he's going to just be, awesome for an NBA team because you can do things with him you can't do with most centers. And that's the kind of guy who goes to the NBA early, and you're not going to get much value out of him in college. Whereas Dickinson, it's a perfect example of a guy that NIL opens up college to keep and makes the college game better. Just off the field, on the court, it's better for everybody that he's in college.
The problem with Musa, of course, is it sounds like he's not getting drafted because and he tested off the charts.
Someone's going to draft him.
You think so?
Someone's going to draft him.
He tested off the charts. But
the guy that you want's going to go, at 15, and you're going to look around and be like, okay, I'm building a team for the future too. Having that guy in your back pocket is that's too good a value to pass up in the first round.
I tend to agree with you, and I'm surprised that none of the mocks have him going even in the second round.
Even if he goes in the second, though, the bet on his athleticism is pretty safe, in my opinion. Especially if you're like the Heat. If you're the Heat and you can put them behind, or you can bring them up in the program and have, Bam Adebayo be his model, or Boston, and he can come up behind, their guys. For instance, and Al Horford especially, or I mentioned Utah with Rudy Gobert, you can put him in a scenario where he's watching the guy that he's going to play like and really cultivate, because you hear the cliche all the time, you can't teach what he can do. You can't teach what he can do physically. If he can be a decent shooter, just decent, not great, can he shoot like he shot at the combine, which is a big if, right? But if he can do that, he can play in the NBA for a long, long time. Long, long time. So I think he's going to be fine. I'm more concerned. How about this? I'm more concerned about Caleb. And Caleb is the one you talked about as the first round pick. Like, I could see him being a first round pick. And his model is Duncan Robinson. He's not a 3-and-D guy. He's a 3 guy. But he didn't shoot it like Duncan in high school. I mean, he didn't shoot it like Duncan at Michigan. So he still has to develop.
He didn't shoot it like Duncan in high school either. He made his shots, but they were wide open set shots. And Duncan Robinson, the reason why he's so valuable to an NBA team is he can get his shot from anything. And that's the ability that he creates. And Caleb Houston's shown absolutely none of that.
Well, Brian, that's who if you draft him, that's who you think he's going to be, right? He's not a 3-and-D guy. He's a 3 guy.
I think he has better defensive potential than Robinson. I mean, Robinson was hideous at Michigan, and Houston improved over the course of the year, where he was very bad to start, but you could see him kind of round into a decent defender halfway through the year, which Robinson never did in 4 years at Michigan. So I think that he has better potential on that end of the floor. But I mean, as Seth mentioned, look at what Robinson's doing in the NBA, where he's getting, like, if he starts, he's getting off 8 threes a game. And I just don't see Houston being able to do any of that. And maybe that's something he's going to be able to develop over the next couple of years, but I think it's going to be a while before he emerges into even a rotation player in the NBA. So I don't know what NBA team that has guaranteed him is thinking. I don't know if it's Steinbrenner come back from the grave being like, oh, I'm an Ohio State fan. Let's mess with Michigan. But I try not to be too strident about this because, of course, my Jordan Poole take was terrible. But I just don't get it. And I think everybody on this podcast is in the same boat.
Yeah, in the same boat. But hopeful that, because I want to be clear, I want him to be successful. My concern is that if he doesn't show like really rapid improvement as a 3-point shooter, that they're going to be done. Like I think you bet on athleticism for a while. Like, you roll with that for a while. You try for that for a while. But if you're a shooter and you don't start shooting it quick, fast, and in a hurry, even at the G League level, they're like, see ya. So I just hope it doesn't. I hope it's not like that for him.
Well, I think we're all rooting for him. To succeed. We want him to be a success, and we want him to be a good player and have a career. And I don't know what it's going to take to get him from point A to point B. Exactly. I mean, it may be he ends up playing in Europe. It may be, he gets there at some point in time. But I'm with you and Brian that it's, the short run, it's hard to see. But obviously, I mean, I saw the most recent one from yesterday had him number 25 to San Antonio. I was thinking since Oklahoma City had a flock of picks, they would take a shot at him and try and develop him. But obviously, the NBA is seeing something in his game that they think translates. That's for sure. Now, I will disagree on Duncan Robinson's defense. I agree that for 3.5 years he wasn't very good. His last half of his senior year, Beeline put him on big guys. He no longer was checking wing players, and he put him down on
But that's still a
centers.
defensive liability.
Well, he
I mean-
wasn't bad. No, he was competent in the last half of his senior
No, but I'm
year at
saying if
Michigan.
you have to, if they have to push you down a level, if you have to guard
Yeah.
fours instead of threes,
Yeah,
that means you're a defensive liability because it means you're
Right.
guarding somebody less athletic.
I agree with that, Seth. But functionally, he became a functional defensive piece at Michigan in the last half of his last year when they decided we got to have him on the court, but we got to put him on bigger, slower guys.
I mean,
I think. Go ahead, Brian.
does this change the way you think Michigan should approach recruiting?
That's
Because
a great question.
like Caleb Houston was all right as a freshman, and now he's gone. If Caleb Houston is 6'5", he's probably still in college, and he's not ranked in the top 10. He's probably ranked 40th or whatever. And that to me seems like a better player. Maybe not as a freshman. Maybe he struggles a little bit more getting a shot off as a freshman, but then you get him for a couple more years down the road. That seems more valuable to me than like the top 10 player.
I mean, you sound like John Beeline. I mean,
Well, I'm not saying like go
but
way
that's
off
not a
the board.
criticism. I'm saying yes, you're right. Where was Jordan Poole rated?
He was outside the top 100.
Yeah, right around number 100.
But Poole
he's
needed
around.
development. Our whole, people are forgetting the whole takes on Poole was not yet. No one was saying Poole, you're not an NBA player. Everyone thought Poole was an NBA player. We were just like, stick around, man. Spend one more year here, and you could be in the top of the draft.
And he did take a number of years to kind of round into the player he is today. So maybe in an NIL world he does stay, but that wasn't the world that he was in.
And he went to the perfect franchise. Like
Right.
I don't think you can discount how beneficial to his development it was, and how much it sort of played into the kind of player, the kind of mentality. I mean, everything about JP at Michigan and John Beeline was shot selection, man. It was like, and that's not a concern at Golden State. You shoot any shot at Golden State, right? So he went to the perfect club with the perfect role models, and he also obviously is really talented. So it was a great scenario, and hopefully, these guys, Moose and Caleb, have a similar circumstance. I mean, one of the teams you mentioned, OKC, the other team with 3 first-round picks is the San Antonio Spurs, Craig. And that was the team that they were talking about taking him at 25. That would be a great landing spot for Caleb. And it makes sense that those teams, like if there's a promise being made, which is the rumor, that it would be one of the teams with 3 first-round picks, right?
Sure.
You got the excess, if you will.
And if you've used 2 of them and Musa Diabate is still on the board, you're breaking that promise in a heartbeat. Or else I am.
But you got if it's those 2 teams, which is the speculation, and that's 6 picks. That's 6 picks. And the rumor is that one of those teams made them a promise, or maybe both of them. I don't know, but I guess I would feel a little better about it if we're talking about between 2 teams and 6 picks in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 3 first-round picks, the third one is probably going to be a guy you want to stash in the G League for a little bit. So that fits really either Houston or Diabate.
Yeah. But isn't Brian's big point a pretty good one? That is, maybe you're better off drafting in the 40 to 120 range, or recruiting in the 40 to 120 range, uh, as opposed to a top 10 or 20 kid who you can only keep for a year anyway. I mean, is that,
I mean, I think it depends on like who we're talking about here. Like if you can get Bonchero or Chet, I think you go get Bonchero and Chet. But there's a sort of like second tier. Like who is the kid at North Carolina? Nasir White, Nasir Little.
is
We
your
played
little,
that
yeah.
team, and he played 20 minutes in that game, and he wasn't good. Like he was not a good player.
Hmm.
But they played that kid 20 minutes a game, despite the fact that he couldn't really play. And then he went like in the lottery because he's a ridiculous athlete who's 6'6". So I think it's the shape of the player that you're really looking at. And the thing with Houston is he's the shape of the player where you're like, yeah, we'll take him even if it's for a year because, yeah, who couldn't use 45% 3-point shooting? And then he comes in below expectations, and the NBA doesn't care.
Right.
It's like because there's only a limited number of people shaped like they can play in the NBA, and he's still shaped like he can play in the NBA. And you're going to see the same thing with Patrick Baldwin. Patrick Baldwin was one of the worst players in college basketball
Yeah,
last year.
he was terrible.
He
was
shot like
terrible.
4% from three, and he's still going to go in the first round. So, like, I think you
What
like
do you look at that?
you want to
Yeah.
look away from guys who have obvious NBA bodies.
So
unless they're
you're saying
superstars.
that a guy like Jaden Ivey who is like 6'4", 6'5", is the guy that you would be most inclined
Well,
towards pursuing.
Ivy's maybe not the best example because he's
He
also
was
a
not.
ridiculous athlete, but I don't
Yeah.
think he was ranked in
He wasn't,
5-star
and he
territory.
No,
yeah, he
not
was
even
not even
close.
close. And he was, and I think they tracked his first dunk in EYBL as like a junior. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy. So
Well, and
he
then Keegan Murray's the same way, right? Like and then Nick Stauskas is in the same boat where you bring these
Yeah.
guys in, they have a pretty good freshman year, and then they dominate as sophomores. So you get guys coming from off the board, but you have those guys, they have to have the year where they absolutely blow up before they go. And with Caleb Houston, the college year, or Diabate, the college year where he absolutely blows up isn't on the table. You could get that from either of those guys next year, but instead they're going to go to the league. I think in part because they would be in danger if they came back next year and they didn't blow up. Like if Caleb Houston has a first round guarantee now, you take it, because if he comes back and he's the same player next year, then I don't think he's getting drafted. So in some sense, this is a defensive move from one or both.
Well, I want to. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go straight through it. I don't want to miss Craig's because last week you were finishing the podcast with a couple of softball questions. I promised you that we would get to them this week, and I don't want to get out of this show without giving you the opportunity to jump back in, because we now have the confirmation that 3 major contributors. And maybe the biggest contributor on the roster are all in the portal when you talk about Hannah Carson, Weidra, and of course Alex Storako,
Storako.
all in the portal for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on. And Hutch hasn't spoken to this, I don't think, at all. And it's a mystery to me. It was a mystery to me why they lost Lou Allen last year. Lou Allen was a top 10 or 20 recruit, didn't really do too much at Michigan. And then last year she broke out and was Michigan's best hitter. And then she's gone. Now, it's not like she's going to Oklahoma. She's going to Liberty. And so she goes to Liberty, and there's no comment from anyone about why in the world she's at Liberty. And now this year, you can sort of understand Hannah Carson going, perhaps because there may be a scholarship crunch, and there's this kid Lily Valancourt who's a top 10 player in the country and a catcher. But still, Carson was your cleanup hitter, and Weidra was the player of the year in Alabama last year. she looks like she was a definite part of Michigan's future. She also is a pitcher, and they're losing Bobian, and as it turns out, also Storako, and so she might have been their number one pitcher next year, and she's also a hitter. She's gone, and the worst is Storako. So now they're down with Storako in the. Is Storako going because she's pissed about Carson? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what's going on here.
I'd hate to speculate. I'd hate to
Yeah,
speculate.
I mean, it's a complete speculation, but it seems odd that that this team would lose 3 players for next year who are all absolutely key to their future success. Now, like I say, you can understand Carson. The other 2 are hard to understand. Now they're right now the pitching looks like Durkowski, and that's it. Now they do have, I will say this, and they do have a phenomenal recruiting class coming in. They've got 2 top 10 kids, Lily Valancourt, and they've got another top 10 kid who's I've got it written down somewhere.
Well, as you're finding it, Craig, I guess I would. My first reaction is, it's not surprising that we haven't heard commentary on players hitting the portal like Lou Al. I mean, this is not like this is new territory for softball. I think you would agree that it's not typical that there's softball analysis on this level. I talked to Hutch about this in an interview. We're watching one of the games, I think in the Big Ten tournament, and they were just beside themselves, sort of second guessing Hutch's decision to go to, I think it was Widra instead of Alex Storako. And I was like, well, wow, this is different. They're second guessing Hutch. You're getting deep analysis on this level on softball. So this is my point, is that it's the sport is moving to a level where now I think we're going to start hearing them talk about things, and this is what's minutia in the eyes of many in the past is major frontline news to people now when you have top softball players going to the portal. So it's not that abnormal to me for her to not comment on Lou Allen last year. Maybe Storako. I expect at some point we'll hear some comment on Storako for sure.
Yeah, one would think we'd hear something at least. But yeah, outside of Valancourt, the other kid is Avery Fantucci, who is a top 10 player in the country. And incidentally, Seth talked, I think, some about this last week on the on the power / speed thing. Michigan has been sort of a speed team, quote speed team this year, but they really gained nothing from their speed. I mean, I think they were like 14 of 19 or 9, in stolen bases or something like that, which is essentially a break even. They lost a bit from the opposition on stolen bases, but they gained basically zero this year.
What I was saying is, if you're going to be a small ball team and you're going to build your team for slap hitting, then you have to be aggressive on the base pass.
And they're not.
They're not. They're a slap team that's not aggressive, which is just that's just killing you. So, and the way that softball is going now is big swinging. So it would make sense. Like, I understand what's going on is that they signed a big class and they only have 12 scholarships. They should open up to more scholarships for softball, but small teams don't want to do that, and small teams run the show. So it's an NCAA problem. I don't think it's a Michigan. I don't think that people are bailing from Hutch's program.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That is gonna have to cut it because I don't know if you guys realize that we didn't take a break. So it was
I realized. I saw you jumping up and down going, break, and we're just talking right through you.
Yeah, sorry, Ira.
It was a marathon session, so we're going to have to cut it now and come back to you guys next week for another spirited MGoBlog Roundtable. So thanks a lot to all of you. As we get to this break, I want to remind those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle to get on board with Brighton Ford. There are great deals to be had for well-qualified lessees like the one on the 2022 Ford Explorer, four-wheel drive XLT, $296 a month with $2,000 down, or the 2022 Bronco Sport Big Bend for $324 a month with $2,000 down. And last but not least, the 2022 Ford Ranger Super Crew, $207 a month with $2,000 down. For more details, call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan, or go to brightonford.com. We'll see you